Welcome to Architects of Imagination, a game dev podcast where we talk to the brilliant minds behind your favorite video games. And I'm very excited to have my good friend Ralph Barbagallo on today. Welcome to the show, Ralph.
Hi. You can tell he's my good friend because he pronounced my last name correctly, which I just taught him how to do seconds before this recording started.
I have not always gotten it correct.
Yes. Yeah, no, it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah, I'm stoked to have you on. We mostly know each other from E3 and GDC at the EP and GDP.
I mean, you did work with me as well.
Yes, we did do a game together.
Yes.
But we go back from well before that.
No,
and
for
every
sure.
time,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
every time we hang out, it's a blast. You're super fun to talk to, so I'm super glad to have you on. Why don't you tell us first? Let's just kick off with what you're up to right now. What are you working on? What are you rapping?
Well, I'm shamelessly promoting what I'm working on right now, Xenotilts, hostile pinball action. It's out on Steam in early access, but I mean, it doesn't feel like an early access game. It's pretty full featured. So you can go get Xenotilt right now. Pinball, bullet hell, aliens, missiles, lasers. It's pinball, but I feel pinball has this weird stigma. Every time I try to, certain people when I talk about pinball, like, oh, pinball. But it's like, no, you can play the game. It has like robots, quests, explosions. You can open an airlock like an alien and all the stuff gets sucked into it. There's all kinds of stuff going on in this game. So you should play this game. It's not like the Addams Family or Twilight Zone pinball. It's some other stuff that you probably haven't seen before.
Very cool. Yeah, it's fun to push the boundaries and innovate in a genre that maybe hasn't before. That's one like design trend that's been going on too is like genre bashing, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
I think of games like Don't Starve, where they're taking kind of like horror and crafting mechanics, and it's like even Call of Duty, right? They sort of combined RPG, like level progression and shooters. So that's gonna be a fun space to like examine. Yeah.
I feel like everything's an RPG now. Like ever since GTA San Andreas, which was what, like 20 years ago now. Once that came out, remember you had to work out, your character would get fat, it had like all these weird stats. I feel like ever since that game came out, like every game has added RPG elements to every possible genre. I mean, that's been going on for a while, but I feel like that game kind of mainstreamed it, and now you see that in everything, right? Like, it's cool, but yeah, there's definitely a lot of mashing up going on.
Yeah, another one that grabbed me recently, Vampire Survivor, which like got strangely, I was surprised it got Game of the Year, but it's a super fun game. But that's kind of like a bullet hell game plus like
Mm-hmm. Oh, now like it's called Bullet Heaven. That's its genre because it's like the inversion of Bullet Hell. I've learned
okay, yeah, like yeah,
it's
you
a
are
new genre. Yeah. That game, I'm not, I'm not surprised they got Game of the Year because at first I was like, well, that's trolling. But then, when it came on Game Pass, like I bought it on Steam when it first came out. I was like, what is this? And then, you know, I'm like, I just kind of played a little bit. I'm like, all right. But then when it came out on Game Pass, I got it again. And then the DLC was out, so I got all the DLC. And I just like this past like Christmas, like a year ago, I just got sucked in, and I dropped in, and I just understood the game. And I'm like, oh, I get it. I can kind of see why this is Game of the Year, even though my first Game of the Year was Elden Ring. I could totally see it. I totally understand. It's not really trolling because that game's amazing, and there's so many ripoffs of it. Even though it itself was kind of a ripoff of some other mobile game, it's like created its whole genre. So like I don't know, it's worthy. It's in the conversation. I think for Game of the Year of that year.
Yeah, for sure. I got sucked in too. It's like it's very, very few and far between where I 100% a game and get all the achievements in it. But I did on that one. It was a blast.
Yeah.
Let's talk about let's go to some current events. Unity's been in the news this week.
Yeah.
They announced a new pricing model that included everyone having to pay 5 cents, or depending on
depending on the day of the week
subscription.
when they
And yeah,
they keep changing it.
And I think I just read that they have apologized. They're going to change it. I don't know where this is landing, but like, is the damage done at this point?
I mean, look, people who know me know I'm a Unity freak. I've been using Unity since 2010 or so. And I just think like a huge chunk of the game industry would not exist if it wasn't for Unity. But it is true that Unity gave us this incredible free engine that was subsidized by venture capitalists or whatever, and it was free. Although, you know, back in the day, I remember Unity people telling me that like, although they raised a bunch of money back then in like 2013 or whatever, before they went public, that the company was profitable. So I don't think it was, you know, some people have been telling this story of like, well, you know, we got it for free because it was subsidized by like, you know, all the VCs. I'm not sure if that was really true because I think there was a point where they were actually making money. But I kind of understand that, like, you know, I don't know, they IPO'd, and when you IPO, you know, you kind of have to, it's now you're trying to satisfy shareholders. You're not trying to satisfy me as a developer. I'm irrelevant. You're trying to satisfy shareholders. And the company doubled its headcount during COVID. So it went from like 4,000 to 8,000 employees.
Oh, wow.
Something like that, right? I could be completely wrong.
Like coders to developing.
They're not. The one thing they're not doing, they're not fixing the bugs. I mean, like, I love Unity and it's very good, but there's some things like, why are there still 3 renderers and they're still not doing a parity with each other? It's been 7 years in the making. Like, you know, like, so there's 8,000 employees, but a lot of these big problems haven't been solved. But regardless, you know, the engine's way like before, let's say before JR became CEO, whatever. You know, there were some dark times. I mean, people forget Unity 5 in 2015 was the worst version of Unity ever. That was terrible. When they yanked out the lighting system and put in their own that didn't work. I mean, it was bad. So, I mean, the engine, in my opinion, is still cool. And I've built Unreal projects, and, you know, Unreal is, you know, I can't say, like, I don't like it as much, but I can't say if that's because the engine isn't as good, because that's not true, but it just works a completely different way. So I'm just kind of, like, used to Unity. So I mostly became a Unity fan because, well, at the time there was no choice, because back then, Unreal 3 or whatever, you had to pay a gajillion dollars. But also, Unreal, 5% is a lot of your money to give up. And I'm sure you can go get a deal somehow and reduce that in exchange for upfronts or whatever, but that's a lot of money. And so for me, not having a royalty was, I will suffer through any, you know, I will jump through any flaming hoops in Unity to not pay a royalty. But now that they want me to pay this install fee, well, you better fix these bugs. Like, wait, like, what are you talking about now? Like, I pay for Unity Pro, okay, and like this stuff that's so broken in Unity, like you never use a new Unity feature because they're always broken. So you want an install fee? You know, like maybe you should make the stuff work if you're going to charge this much money. Like, it's kind of preposterous. Like, they're going to make us pay more money, but we get absolutely nothing in return. So you can apologize all you want, but I just think, like, the value proposition, nobody understands what it is. So, and also, I mean, look, an install fee makes no sense. Like, how do you calculate that? First, they said they're going to calculate it through their AI, but anybody who's used the new Unity feature knows that they can't make anything that works in under 5 years. You know what I mean? Like, nobody uses their new input system. That thing has been in there since, like, what, 2014? Still doesn't work. So you mean to tell me that they're going to make an AI that could detect installs when they still, you know, there's stuff that's broken in the URP renderer for 7 years? So just on a technical level, I'm like, I don't believe they can actually implement that, even if it was possible. And then we just have to trust them that their install count is correct. Whereas I think with Unreal, you have to self-report your revenue. But now they changed it, right? Now we can self-report installs. They're changing it every day. But I'm not even sure if I have that data, like, in some cases. So, I don't know. Like, I'm not sure how much it's going to affect me because the way the numbers work out, like, as far as hitting that threshold for reporting, I don't know.
And then they kind of backtracked and said that like the console platforms will be paying.
That's my favorite. It's like, have you called anybody over there? Like, you might want to check in with them. I'm pretty sure they haven't actually, you know, have they called anybody at Microsoft to ask them if they would politely pay them all this money? Because I'm pretty sure I know have they called Apple? Has Tim Cook gotten a phone call from JR? And ask them to politely pay an install fee for the billions and billions of downloads Unity apps get on their platform. I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure if that's. If they've done that yet.
If they're right, I mean, they got a massive moneymaker on their hands.
I mean, is the strategy we're going to hold the entire game industry hostage and say, if you don't pay us, part of your platform fee. We're going to turn the lights out on 70% of mobile games that are made, because apparently 70% of mobile games are made with Unity. Is that what they're trying to do? I don't really know. It makes absolutely no sense. I understand they need to make money. If you look at their numbers, they're broke. Right? They're going to be like out of money in like 3 years. And again, I probably don't know what I'm talking about, but from vaguely reading articles, I haven't even, looking at their public filings, it seems to me that they're running out of money, and most of their growth is from like services revenue, which includes the ad network. And I really think what this is all about is trying to force mobile game developers to use their ad network, because their ad network is what makes, that's like their Fortnite. Like Epic has Fortnite that like makes a bunch of money, and then they have engine development to support it. And like they had their ad network, but then they merged with Iron Source last year, which was like an ad network. And so now it seems like they're an ad network company. The engine's just kind of like, oh yeah, we also make a game engine. And so now they're like trying to get everybody to use their ad network. And the problem is, of course, ads don't really make money like they used to anymore because of all the privacy changes that Apple enacted. So their entire revenue growth plan for ads has been kneecapped. So I think it's like desperate times. But I also don't understand why they care about me as a PC console, VR, AR developer. Like, we don't have the numbers that mobile has. So maybe, in my opinion, like, why don't you just make this install fee just for mobile platforms? And then, again, like, because they do have that thing where, like, if you use their ad network, I think the install fee goes away or whatever. That's, in my opinion, I think that's just what they're trying to do, is to force people to use their ad network, because that's where all their money comes from. So leave me alone. Like, I have nothing to do with that. Like, I don't touch mobile. But that's just my guess. It seems like, I understand they have to make money, and I always thought that the seat license thing wouldn't quite scale. But also, I don't really think they enforce their seat license stuff, that well. You keep hearing about studios that have like 20 Unity free seats and then 1 Unity Pro. They make the bill with Unity Pro. It's like, you know what? Why don't you start there? Like, there's people out there that owe you guys money, like right now. And I feel like earlier versions of Unity, you couldn't, Free and Pro couldn't interoperate. I could have sworn, I could be wrong. And I feel like that, there's a lot of places where they can make money, like Plastic SCM. Like, I think Plastic's really good. They can make that as big as GitHub and make money outside of the ecosystem. It shouldn't just be for game developers. I think it's actually a really good product. Post-acquisition, it kind of sucked pre-acquisition, but I think when Unity bought, it actually got a lot better. There's a lot of ways they can make money, but this is preposterous. I don't even understand how it would even work at a technical level.
Yeah, I've been frustrated with their pricing model too, in that, we're a service company, right? Sometimes we get hired for short projects, like with you, mm-hmm. when we worked on the one thing with you, and we have to now buy licenses for. You can't turn on and off Unity subscriptions, so it's like we have to commit to a year long for a little 2-month project. It's like, it's not not ideal.
But you know what? If that meant that they got rid of the install, like, I think that they could enforce that in a way they could make. I don't know. Maybe that just doesn't scale, like I said. But I kind of feel like, they should enforce this Pro thing. They shouldn't allow companies to have 20 free licenses of 1 Pro if you're going to do that, right? You're kind of obviously skirting the rules. But like last time when I had to renew my license, I got a call. They're like, hey, there's a guy in your project that doesn't have Pro, which I didn't know. I had upgraded. Fine, it's all fair, because that was the expressed contract before they pulled this stuff. But I feel like they should have again, going to Plastic, which is really cool. They only charge you for monthly active users. So when I have 20 people in a project for the month, and they're all checking in stuff and checking out stuff, I pay, I think it's like, I don't know, $10 a month for each one of those users. But then if people stop, the contractors or your contract ends or whatever, the project's over, and you're down to 1 or 2 developers, now I'm only paying $20 a month. And I kind of feel like what they should do for Unity Pro, this would be, again, not based on me knowing that this would actually work financially, but I feel like for every 2 Pro licenses, they should give you 1 monthly active user license, which would allow somebody to dip into a project for a month, and you pay a prorated, you pay like a month for that month that that user's in there. And then he or she just dips out. So it's like, okay, I have to buy 2 Pro. That way you can't just cheat. So I have to buy 2 Pro licenses, and then I get a monthly license as well. So if I need an artist to check in something just for a month, or a QA person to check in something for a month, I get that extra license active for a month, and I got to pay that month and then dip out. And I think you'd be able to capture a lot of value that way for people who normally just be trying to slide by with like free and plus. But I don't know. I don't know if that makes sense. I just feel like the scale of money that these guys need to make, because now they just have so much debt and obligations to pay. Maybe this is just small potatoes. And again, I think it's all about the ad network. And I just kind of feel like if that's the case, then why do you care about I almost feel like they don't care if every single console, PC, and VR and AR developer leave. They don't care. They just want to strangle mobile developers until they use their ad network. That's what it just seems like to me. And they're willing to just have all of us just bail. The only problem is, in my opinion, there's no alternative, especially for 2D. Like, I've looked around, like, what's my escape pod? And it's tricky because none of these engines compare. They just don't compare. I mean, especially the knowledge and the code base that I built up over 2 of these pinball games. It's like, I don't know what I don't know. We're all planning our escape, kind of, sort of.
Yeah,
but I don't know. I don't know
people
where
are looking
because
at
nothing compares.
Godot or Godot, or I don't know how you pronounce it.
Yeah. No, it's not there yet.
Yeah.
Maybe 5 years from now, you know?
Unreal can do 2D stuff.
It's terrible at 2D, though. They need to beef that up. I mean, Tim, pay me to make Xenotilt 3 or something in paper 2D and in Unreal, and just do everything we ask for, and maybe you'll have a competent 2D engine in there. Yeah, I mean, Unreal, but for 3D, and if you're doing VR and AR, Unreal, Meta does it. Like, I don't know if they have a deal with Meta or whatever. Here's a case where maybe the platform pays for it, right? You don't pay the Unreal royalty until you pass 5 million in revenue on the Quest. So if I was doing VR right now, I probably, even though I think Unity's a way better engine for VR, financially, I don't know. If I was starting a new VR project right now, I'd probably start it in Unreal. I'm not sure.
Interesting. Let's pivot to let's talk about the economy and how it's affecting the game industry. At our company we've noticed a downturn this year. We went for a while without new contracts. We're kind of coming around again. Things are picking up now, but and I hear that sort of across the board from a lot of people that this has been a very thin year. I know a friend of ours, studio just shut down. There's been layoffs at a few people. And I've thought about why that is. What's your perception? How are you feeling about games and the economy and the tech layoffs? How that's it's affected it.
It's weird, right? I mean, people still have money, right? I mean, I think the money's just in other places. I mean, I've experienced the same thing, like as far as the stuff that goes on outside of the games that we develop and publish, like as far as things that sometimes external companies want us to work with them and stuff. Yeah, a lot of that stuff has slowed down dramatically. I remember it started like last October when people, I'd be like talking to a company and then all of a sudden the email bounces and it's like, oh, they laid everybody off and I know this company. And it just kept happening. It started about a year ago. And yeah, but I mean, I just think that like there's still a lot of money out there. I mean, and I just feel during COVID, these companies thought this was the new normal and they just exploded. Like we just talked about, Udemy doubled their headcount, I think, during COVID. A lot of companies did that and it just was not sustainable. And with interest rates at 0% or whatever, money's not as easy to come by. So there's not a lot of money flowing to people like you or I, or you or me, however you grammatically say that, because it's just money's harder to come by in general because they have to pay more for money or whatever. I'm not a financial wizard, but as I understand it, that's definitely affecting things. But I mean, I still think that there's and it's still an insatiable demand for games. It's not like people aren't playing games and aren't buying games. I mean, this game actually, when we launched it, this game has sold way better than the first game, which came out in 2019. In the glory days of free money. So, I think that there's demand, but I think that companies are placing bets in different ways, and they're not throwing money around like crazy like they were 2 years ago because it's harder. It's money's more expensive.
Yeah, that's true. And my kind of theory has been that like some of this, and even the tech downturns too, are sort of a backlash to the COVID response, where COVID hit, and basically every company that could go remote did, like all at once, right? And time was lost, and like infrastructures had to change, and so people scrambled to like get games out, and in general, so there was a hiring spree, right? Salaries inflated. And now we're sort of like after that period, those games have shipped now, and that combining with money drying up a little bit, like there's a I don't know, I feel it. There's feels like a contraction to me. But yeah, just anecdotally, we're coming out of it now. We just signed, a few new contracts in the last couple of months. So,
Oh, cool.
we're through the worst of it. That's good. Yeah, let's talk about your past. Tell us how you got started in game development.
Oh, well, in game development, I mean, I've been playing games since I was, 3 or 4 years old, right? I mean, I'm a man of a certain age.
Computer and/or console?
My first console was a ColecoVision, Christmas 1982.
Yeah.
But before that, I had, seen video games. Some kid I went to like first grade with had an Atari 2600. I begged my mom to take me to his house. I don't remember the kid's name. I just remember like going to his house and my mom and his mom were in the kitchen talking, and me and this kid were playing Space Invaders. I'm just like, this is amazing. My grandfather used to take me to the arcade and he would hold me up. I was like 3 years old. He would hold me up so I could reach the controls. And I'll never forget this like foundational experience was, I grew up in Boston, the Boston area, and my dad's friend worked for Digital, which was like a big company,
Yeah.
I don't think they exist anymore, but they were, and so they used to have like a family day where they would bring, your friends and your family could come to the Digital camp. These were like the Facebook and Googleplexes of the 1970s, right? They were like these big campuses.
PDP,
you go there,
alphas, and all
yeah.
this. Yeah.
And you could see all this miraculous technology. And I remember, and this must have been like, I swear it was like 1979. I must have been like 4 years old or something. But I still have this vivid memory of like going into this room, and they had different exhibits, and it must have been a PDP 11 or something. And it was playing tic-tac-toe on a monochrome screen, and I was just standing there, amazed. X. Oh, this is incredible. My dad's like, what do you like? There's a laser show at the planetarium. We got to go see the lasers. And I'm like, just kept wanting to play tic-tac-toe. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. This is the most incredible thing I'd ever seen. And I'll never forget that. And so I was an addict from early on as far as games and interactive computing, whatever you want to call it. Yeah. So, another time, I think before I had my ColecoVision, my friend's dad got the Telstar arcade from Coleco that just had the gun and it was the black screen with the white dot bouncing back and forth. They just shoot at the plastic gun. I couldn't believe it. Today, kids can buy VR at Walmart, and they think it's all right.
Yeah.
And like that's their VR. I can't imagine what stuff's gonna be like, 50 years from now when I'm dead or whatever. But that's So video games were just fascinating to me from early on.
Yeah, and I remember his name. I also had a buddy up the street who had an Atari 2600. And I went to his house as much as I could, not to hang out with him, but to play.
There's always that guy. Yeah.
His name was Robbie Balmat.
Shout out Robbie Balmat.
Yeah.
Our street was like the United Nations of video games. I had the ColecoVision, which was, let's be real, the Neo Geo of 1982. It was incredible.
Yep.
My buddy Dave, I'm still friends with to this day. He had Intellivision, which I was fascinated by. It seemed like very mature. George Plimpton told you this is the mature selection for the educated palate. And Greg, my buddy Greg, who, I occasionally contact with, he had the 2600 up the street. And my buddy Justin, who's no longer with us, but he had an Odyssey 2.
Oh,
so
man.
we had everything covered.
We had all of them.
We had everything covered. Yeah.
Yeah,
and
Joel,
you were best friends with the person whose console you like the best. Yeah.
Joel Gumont up the three doors down.
Shout out to Joel Gumont. There was some guy I don't remember who had an Atari 5200. It was the only person I ever knew that had one.
Hell yeah! So what's the leap from all that to then making them yourself?
Well, so I grew up in Boston, and I'll never forget. One time. Once a family trip, driving up 114, and there was this building, this is 1983 or something, right? Atari 2600 just popping. And there's this building, and it says Parker Brothers on the building, because Parker Brothers is from the North Shore, like Salem, Mass, around there, Peabody, Salem, Mass. And I'm just like, wait. I remember I was in the back seat of the car. My parents were driving, so I'm like, Parker, that's the company that makes Frogger. They made Empire Strikes Back. Wait, there's like a job? Like there's a building and people are in there? making video. That's like because I had no idea where video games came from. Back then you think food comes from the supermarket. You don't know anything. So I just was like, wait, that's when I just started thinking like, whoa, like this is a job. Like you go to work in that building and then video games come out. So the wheels started turning way back then when I drove by. I wish I had somehow gotten a tour or something back then, but I don't even know if that building was where they were making video games. But it is true that in the New England area, there was a group of developers that worked at Parker Brothers that formed this like loose collective. I think they're called the Blue Sky Rangers or something like that. Or the Microsmiths, I think they were called. I bumped into some of them later in my career, and they all kind of were in that scene in the New England area making games. But yeah, that's when I just started thinking about it. And I always took games kind of dead serious as far as like a career and trying to make them is concerned. And I was always trying to make them. I wasn't particularly good at it, but I was always in my basement trying to program like Commodore 64. But making games was a dark art. There was no internet. You had to know somebody who knew how to write assembly. So it was hard to just figure stuff out. And so I was also really into construction kits. So they had shoot 'em up construction kit, pinball construction kit, arcade game construction kit. So I always thought that was like, I was always looking for a shortcut to learning how to actually program. I was like trying to use all these different things. And then I got really into writing. I thought game journalism, like I wrote for a lot of magazines and stuff, because I thought that somehow, back then there were this was pre-Doom even, there were no level editors. I couldn't show somebody that I knew how to design a game without writing one, and I wasn't particularly good at writing them from scratch. So I did a lot of writing for magazines and stuff, and I was trying to use that as a portfolio to prove that I could like think critically about games. So when I went and applied for jobs, I could just give them my stack of writing to be like, look, I'm not just some idiot. And back then, that's kind of like, you could get away with that. Nowadays, you actually have to make a game. I mean, you can.
Yeah.
But that's kind of how I did it. I mean, I applied for a job at this place called Papyrus. This was the first real game company I worked at. They made racing games, IndyCar racing, NASCAR racing, and they were in Somerville, Massachusetts. And I think I was 19. I got my first job there, and I was working in the art department, which is why I think the first game credit I have in credit as an artist on Road Rash for the PC, because I was technically an artist, I guess you could say, but really all I did was my whole job was the 3DO version we had to convert to the PC, and the 3DO version had 16-bit textures, and the PC we only had one 256 color palette. So my whole job was using this program called the Babalizer, and I would take these CDs of all the Road Rash textures. They're all Targa files. Yeah, I hit a button on this Mac Quadra, and it would take 8 hours to just churn through all the textures to find one 256 color palette that best represented every one of those textures. And so I would just walk around the office and bug people all day because I had nothing else to do all day because that thing would just be churning away. And then when it was done, I had to look at every single texture and go, oh, you know what? We need an extra purple. Put a different ppurple in there. And it got to the point when I used to play Road Rash, I knew the name of every file, every texture. Like this tree would drive by, and I'm like, oh, that's Redwood 0002.tga. And I knew every single texture. So that's why I'm credited as an artist. I think that's my first credit, I think, in that game, even though I don't really consider that being an artist.
Man, and you've worked on how many games have you worked on now in your career? If you could I've lost track.
I mean, I don't know. Most of them don't count. I mean, I made a lot of mobile games that nobody cares about. They flip phone games. I mean,
all count. Everything counts.
Everything counts, but they don't even exist anymore. Yeah. So I can't. I mean, I don't know, like 20, if you want to call it. I mean, I don't know. I mean, most of them aren't games anybody would recognize as any sort of game. I mean. But yeah, sure. Let's just say 20. I've never really counted. I don't think Moby Games lists 90% of them.
Do you have a favorite project that you worked on?
It's funny. I do wax nostalgic about one of my first mobile games, which was, I believe it was the first licensed mobile game in America, which was Lord of the Rings: The Two Towers for cell phones. There's a guy, I don't know his real name, but shout out to, I think it's KRZ7 or something is his YouTube handle. He's in Ukraine. Somehow while dealing with the Ukraine invasion, he's making YouTube videos about, he's obsessed with cell phone games. And it's actually documented in the history of cell phone games. And he actually he asked me on Twitter, do you have any stuff? So I actually went through my old hard drive backups from like the early 2000s and I found all the stuff and I gave it to him. I did not give him Lord of the Rings, by the way, because that is copywritten.
Right.
He got it some. I think he actually buys old phones and tries to see what games are installed. So he found some old phone that had my Lord of the Rings game installed on it, and he made a documentary. So if you go on YouTube, you look up FLARB Lord of the Rings: The Two Towers, you'll find he does this little brief, because I gave him some factual information about the game. This little brief document, like factual snippet about the game, and then there's a playthrough. It takes about 2 hours to play the game. But that game was cool. It was basically a Shining Force clone, like a SRPG, and it was for the Two Tower. I had some reference. They gave me some movie clips and pictures back then on CD, and we made this. I had 5 weeks to make it, and in 5 weeks, I made the Lord of the Rings: The Two Towers, the mobile game, which actually had a TV commercial that I cannot find. Verizon did a TV commercial for this game, and I wish one of the guys that worked on it, who now is actually one of the big leads on God of War. So FLARB people have good pedigree. He taped the commercial, and on VHS. That's how long it was, and I broke the tape or something. There's no copy of this commercial that exists. If somebody out there has the Verizon commercial that features Lord of the Rings: The Two Towers, I would love to get a copy of it, but I'm sure nobody does.
That's awesome. Speaking of fast development, my first job, my formal job in games at Wild Tangent, we'd put out a game every, not that fast, every 3-4 months with 3-4 people. I'm reading Doom Guy right now, John Romero's book, who we worked with back at Ionstorm.
Sure. Yeah, he was on the other team, but he was in the office.
Okay.
He was my boss, kind of, because he owned the company.
Yeah. He, I'm about halfway through the book now, but they talked about there was a year they put out 13 games.
Yeah.
That is bonk. They were doing every month or two. They were putting out a game. Fucking crazy. Just it's makes me think of game jams. It's you're not putting out a game, but you're exploring a concept in a weekend. But I think people forget that it's possible to do it. You if you are comfortable with the engine and the tech and have an idea, it's possible to just execute it, depending on what kind of game.
Yeah, it's true. Today the expectations are a lot higher than when you release the game commercially. It's a little weird. Back in the day, games were produced a lot quicker, but also there was a lot less going on in them, and the hardware was a lot less complicated. I just think of all the things like right now in Xenotilt, there's an issue where for some people the game just crashes their whole computer, the power cycle of the thing at startup. I don't know why. I've never been able to duplicate it. The logs don't show anything when they send it to me. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's some random piece of hardware that interacts with some other random piece of hardware. I have no idea. But games are just infinitely more complicated. And solving that has nothing to do with making the game fun. So there's so much more stuff to do today around making games that I kind of feel, when hardware was simpler, the expectations were much lower. And because of the hardware being simpler, the assets were, simpler to create, although the tools were a lot worse. So, it's funny, some of my people who are, of the same vintage as myself, like a lot of artists, they get a kick out of shocking the new employees by saying that back in the day, they did the modeling, the texturing, the rigging, and the animating. They just did it all themselves because that's what you did in 1997, 1998.
I've been there.
Yeah.
Totally. Tell us what you're playing now. Are there any games you're hooked on?
I'm playing Starfield.
Okay.
It's it's a Bethesda game. It is what it is. I'm not a huge Bethesda game fan, but I'm playing it. It's a Bethesda game. If you like Bethesda games, you'll like it. I'm
trying to think if we could mention that we worked on it.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
It looks really nice. It's a very nice looking game. It's just I can't imagine developing a game of that scope. It just seems like a real. It's just just the amount of stuff, the amount of content. It's just stuff. Maybe they had an AI tool or something. There's just stuff everywhere, junk everywhere you can pick up, and it's somebody have to manually place every foam cup and lunch tray in every space station. It's just an incredible amount of work.
Yeah, it is. It's it's a big one. I'm hooked on.
But I play a lot of weird stuff. Continue. Yeah.
I'm hooked on Baldur's Gate right now, and Diablo 4 are the two I'm kind of toggling.
Oh, you're playing those? Okay, yeah. See, I don't. I play a lot of I played a Tactics Ogre, the remake. I've been playing a lot of that. and I don't know why. It's just I bought it because again, Lord of the Rings: Two Towers was a Shining Force kind of, I don't want to say clone, but inspired by Shining Force. And so SRPGs are kind of cool. So I was playing through Tactics Ogre, but then I paid 80 hours in. I get to the last boss. I was like, oh, my characters are completely inadequate for the last boss, and you can't go back and grind. So I guess I'm done. So can't beat that game. Let's play Armored Core 6 a little bit. But yeah, I'm trying to think, like, there's no game right now that I'm like super duper into. But that's yeah. I'm playing Starfield because it's kind of like my job as a game developer to be culturally aware of games in general.
Yeah. Let's talk about AR, VR, mixed media stuff. That's sort of the space you've been living in for a while now. Although Demons, is it Xenotilt or so Demon's Tilt was the original?
Xenotilt's the original. Xenotilt's the sequel.
Xenotilt's the sequel, which is not a VR game, right?
No, this is about as far away from VR as you can get. It's 2D, it's sprites, it's retro. It has like a chiptune kind of style to it. The music and stuff. So it's it's good. So there's that, and then there's the VR and AR stuff that I've worked on. It's almost a complete separate thing. And they don't really intertwine.
Talk about the VR AR space. Is there hardware coming up? What's exciting you about it? Are there new moves happening in there?
In that area? Well, I mean, we've got the Quest 3 is coming out, right? They're going to launch it, I guess, at Meta Connect next week, so I'll be there. So I'm excited to see what new content they announced with that, because they did show some content earlier this year. They had like an event, but I'm curious to see if there's any new stuff, like if there's any new features on the headset that enable some new types of content that weren't available before. As far as like new hardware is concerned, I don't know. Like there's always rumors of a new Valve headset, but Valve releases headsets and then they don't support any content development on it. So I'm not quite sure. PC VR seems kind of dead. So I don't really know what a new Valve headset's going to do for anybody, because I think I saw somewhere that the median revenue from a PC VR game is $600. So there's not a big industry around PC VR. Oh, wow. So I'm not sure what a new Valve headset's going to do. And then there's rumors of a Nintendo Google headset. I don't know if that's true, but I mean, crazier theories have been floated, because they did a cardboard headset for Labo for the Switch.
Yeah.
And then Google and Nintendo do have an existing relationship, because you remember, I think it had kind of inspired Pokemon Go, was the Google Maps Pokemon mashup from like 2014 or so. Because I think at that point Niantic was still inside Google's, they were incubated inside Google, and I think that's kind of how their relationship kind of started. So I mean, I could imagine a Google Nintendo VR headset. They did do the Virtual Boy all by themselves in 1995. So
yeah,
but we're kind of in a weird space, because like there's only one company, maybe one and a half. Sony put out the PSVR 2, but I don't really see a lot of resources being put behind making content for it. But Meta seems to be the only company really putting money where their mouth is and building an ecosystem and supporting content being made for VR.
Yeah, and it's like that whole thing's been weird too. Like it seems like, I mean, the Meta's Oculus Quest. It was originally, now it's Meta Quest, right?
Yeah.
They changed their company name, right? Facebook was their main product, and it's like they're all in on VR, and it's a great device. The Quest is phenomenal. But then the whole debacle with them making the metaverse and 80 people like using it or something, like, what is going on over there with all that?
I mean, I think that they, saw that ads don't make money like they used to. And the reason why that is because Apple changed the rules, and Facebook is completely dependent on Apple's ecosystem to make money, largely. There's also Google's. But Google kind of did the same thing. So ads don't make money like they used to. So I think they probably bought Oculus back in the day for other reasons. But now they kind of realize, hey, this is a platform we build and we control. We can monetize it any way we want. So why don't we just double down on this? And is it the right bet? I don't know, but it's a better bet than a lot of other companies have. I mean, Snap seems to be kind of doing a similar thing. They're making their own AR hardware, but I think that AR glasses are way further away. VR works right now. AR spectacles and stuff don't really work that well right now, and it's just a physics and material science problem that prevents that from really happening anytime soon. So I think that, yeah, they're trying to find a way out of, they're trying to build their own ecosystem. And this is one way to do it. I mean, as far as Horizon is concerned, I don't know. I mean, maybe it's a test bed for ideas or something. I don't know if they're actually trying to make that a monetizable product anytime soon, but I know that they've launched a bunch of games in it and stuff. Who knows? I just kind of feel like there's a lot of metaverses like Fortnite and Roblox that have organically gotten traffic because people like them. And it's kind of hard to do it the other way around, just kind of like cram this thing at people and get them into it. I mean, it's kind of weird.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and there was Second Life a while ago was
Mm-hmm.
probably the most successful version of it, and it's weird with Fortnite and Roblox because they are kind of metaverses, but I mean they're really games. So like what
Yeah, but now you can make there's the Fortnite islands, and it's like you can make your own, and then
editor?
you can build games inside Roblox. So I guess they're turning it into a thing. It's interesting, games inside games. That's like a brand new market. Is it going to be a thing? I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine. It just seems kind of weird that first the traffic has to come into the game, and then they have to somehow go to your game inside the game, which is different from the game they were there to play. So I'm
Yeah,
not really sure how that monetizes, but it is definitely kind of interesting, especially the tool side, because you do get interesting development tools that let you build inside these. They already operate at scale multiplayer, so it's kind of interesting from that perspective.
it makes me think the adventure construction kit and the
Yeah,
the ones you were using
I was
on the
yeah
C64 a million years ago. Um,
yeah. I mean,
yeah,
so I could see why people are into it. I could see it.
I think too about just the idea of a generic metaverse, and people talk about NFTs and making things that are like cross game, and yeah, like designing it from a like the hook is a question, right? Like if you're designing like
Mm-hmm.
an office space and people are avatars in a VR headset in their office space, like well, why? Like, what's the reason to do that? Like, is that an improvement on anything? And I know like big consulting firms have people that are like prepping large companies to get presences in the multiverse, and there's going to be maybe some kind of a land rush in there. But like, there's just so many technical hurdles to that. Like, I think of like NFTs making like assets that are cross game compatible. Well, okay, you think about World of Warcraft, right? Where like the characters themselves, they have like proprietary tech built into it. I'm assuming, I don't know their character pipeline, but like in order to like render all the characters in Ogrimmar, like they take all your little selections and they bake it out to a thing, and like, well, how do NFTs fit into that? Where does the
Well, they
bonus?
don't. I mean,
What is the
we're game
damage of
developers.
the
We
thing?
know
Like,
we know NFTs are bullshit. We're game developers. It's complete horseshit.
right.
Like they don't work. There's no way that'll work on two levels. The technical level, it doesn't work, and on the business level, why don't you go try and ask, Ubisoft if they want, Altair or whoever to be
Princess
in
Hat.
Mario
Yeah.
Kart. Well, maybe they wouldn't want him in Mario Kart, but you know what I mean. It's like there's a business. This situation. I mean, it's the only people that are interested in this are grifters that don't know about game development and try to talk my ear off about their weird solution for NFTs. And it's a solution to nothing. It's not a problem. There's not, and I don't want my, you know, spaceship from Starfield to be in, I don't know, my Elden Ring game. I don't care. Nobody cares. This is not anything anybody wants. And most NFT games that I see are just, they're basically just skins around, they're just gambling or skins around speculating on a currency, a quote unquote currency. So, which is fine, whatever, you do you, like, it's like gambling. Like, I don't understand it. I go to Vegas. I don't know what people are doing there. I'm there to eat. I don't know what people are there with the slot machines, and it doesn't make any sense to me. It's for people far worse at math than I am. But whatever, that's your thing. And like people who play NFT quote unquote games, I mean, whatever, more power to you. But I think it's a way for people to, I mean, I don't know, is it even a thing anymore? I mean, I don't even see a lot of chatter about it. I don't even know if it's worth discussing, but people, it's just, I think it's a thing for crypto speculators to kind of have fun, I guess. I don't know. All I know is I wanted to try it out. I bought a horse with horse bucks or whatever from Zed Run. And I cannot figure. And then it's like, oh, you bought the horse, and it's an NFT horse. But now, you gotta to run the horse. You need horse energy. You need, like you have to like buy a horse race ticket, but there's like gas. You have to spend money to spend the money. I'm like, I don't even understand how any of this works. It's so anyway. It's just I think it's just for people who think they're going to somehow make money off of it. It's not like you're not playing it. None of these things, they can't explain to me how any of this stuff makes the game fun.
Yeah, I mean, grifter feels like the right word to me. Like you kind
Yeah.
of saw it at like GDC, like this little like double bubble of like there was this fucking blockchain, and like all games are gonna be blockchain for like half of the
Mm-hmm.
conference, and the booths were like fucking blockchain booths, and then the last like 2 years it was all like NFT stuff, and it seems like
Yeah.
it's falling off
When people
now.
start talking about it, my brain just shuts off. I literally just tell them, not you, because it's just, but like somebody be like, hey, I have an NFT. I'm like, I don't want to talk. I just don't want to talk about it. I don't care. I don't want to talk about it. Like, I don't care. Like, it's a complete waste of my mental energy to even have a conversation. I don't care. The only people I know who are into it are people who know nothing about software engineering. Because it's like, if you knew how this stuff worked, you'd be like, this is real dumb.
Yeah, I agree. It's like so many problems to solve. Let's talk about the future of games. If you were to just sort of project your mind into, you know, three console generations from now, 10, 15, 20 years, where do you, I don't know, what can you imagine will be possible in games that we can't do now?
First, let me open my door because it's really hot in here. I was
Sure.
trying to be. All right. There we go. Okay. It's like 500 degrees in this room. Um, well, I mean, hey, they just leaked Microsoft's 20-year plan, right? The FTC.
Did
Just
they?
we could just look at that. Yeah, apparently somebody somehow in the discovery phase, they leaked Microsoft's roadmap for the past 20 years or something in a PowerPoint presentation. I don't know. I haven't looked at it, but I guess
Oops.
we should just read that and see what the future of gaming is.
Oh man.
Um, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I have no idea. I mean, it just seems like at one point we thought that, I remember the prevailing thought was that consoles were all going to be one. Because if you think about it, the Xbox Series X and the PS5 aren't really that much different from each other. In fact, I think AMD makes both of them, right? So
Yeah.
they're kind of like the same with minor differences between the two. So conceivably, there could be a future where there's just one console, and that console might be the PC. I don't know. I mean, but I feel like now they're starting to rethink that strategy, maybe trying to go in divergent paths. I'm just very curious as to how the handheld space shakes out because I think that the Steam Deck, if Valve really wanted to apply themselves, could be really disruptive. Because I've seen people with the Steam Deck that I never thought would even know about it. You can buy, I guess you can buy it in Best Buy now, right? So
Really?
people are buying it, and I just think that they're maybe one hardware revision away from it being a real factor. Because I mean, you could play God of War on it, you can play Call of Duty on it, and optimizing your game for Steam Deck is now a thing. We spent a little bit of time on it on this game, making sure it was readable and playable. So I'm kind of curious how that shakes out. The Switch, whatever they have in store for the next one, and the Steam Deck. I think Microsoft should jump in there and make it portable. I mean, it seems like a no-brainer.
Yeah,
But
right.
yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of curious how that. I'm curious how the Steam Deck disrupts consoles, if it will at all, because I feel like maybe some of these studios might start pulling back on the PC. You see a lot of Sony first-party games on PC, but will they start pulling back when something like the Steam Deck starts to erode their market share, if that's possible? But most of the stuff they put out, is God of War Ragnarok isn't on PC, but the previous one is. So they make sure there's a lag, but I don't know. I think the Steam Deck's kind of disrupted if they really wanted to pour gas on it.
Yeah, interesting. I don't have one yet. I haven't really. The last handheld I really got into was the DS, and that was a long time ago.
I mean, I still think the 3DS, the Street Pass, was the greatest thing ever. It was really designed for Japan because we're not that population dense, but there's still people I'm friends with on Twitter that I met at an airport on Street Pass in 2013. I think Street Pass was cool. I think it's kind of weird though because handhelds today, the 3DS was a unique handheld, right? It had AR. It was 2011. Had AR, had a 3D lenticular screen, and it had that passive multiplayer Street Pass feature. Now, when you play the Switch, it's literally just a console you hold. And there's nothing about it that's handheld, really,
Yeah.
that's unique to that form. So it's kind of weird. It's like it's not really its own category. It's just kind of like, well, it's a shrunken down version of a console, which is fine. But yeah, I just kind of think that, I mean, I don't know. We'll see how that shakes out, because I don't know. I feel like Steam Deck and that category of devices, could be disruptive to some markets. I'm not sure, because really it's all about content, and Nintendo and Sony, and now Microsoft with the acquisition of Bethesda and Activision, they do have a focus on stockpiling first party content, which they could choose to not make available on these other platforms. Which I think the Steam Deck benefited from everybody being like, "Oh, it's on the PC. It's not a competitor." So just put it on there. And now they have a console and it runs all their PC games. So maybe first-party publishers might think different of putting games on Steam if the Steam Deck becomes truly disruptive. I don't know. But I'm just kind of curious. You got Game Pass, you've got Netflix games, you've got the Epic Game Store with the free game every week. I just am not convinced that people consume games like that necessarily. You could binge watch TV shows, but you can't binge play games. Starfield is going to take me 140 hours to finish. I can't play 5 of those at once. So I think that a lot of people are afraid of these subscription services. I think somehow it's going to destroy the premium games market. But I'm not really sure about that, because I think it appeals to a certain kind of customer. I don't think I feel like your average customer, like for instance on the console, they play 2 games a year. They play like 2K in Modern Warfare 2 and not interested in anything else. So I think it's kind of a good thing, because I feel like it appeals to a different customer, and I don't think it necessarily signals the impending doom of people paying for games, because I just think a lot of people don't consume games like that. But I could be totally wrong. 5 years from now, the whole market could be obliterated and everybody's getting games for free. I don't know.
I mean, I'm with you. I don't have Game Pass. I just know that I'm only going to buy a few games a year on the console and just play them, and I just want to own them. Like, I'm not interested in subscription. I've got too many damn subscriptions.
I know. I mean, I've got a subscription to Game Pass. I got a subscription to PlayStation Plus, Ultra, Mega, whatever it is. They do the same thing. They're launching games on PlayStation Plus. And now some games launch on both. I think Sea of Stars launched on PlayStation Plus and Game Pass on day one. But I'm not sure. There's a lot of discussion of whether it cannibalizes your sales or what have you. But I don't know. I'm not sure there's a danger of that, because I think that's the people that are, at least for now, the people that are into those subscription services are a specific type of customer. So I don't know. I think I cautiously think these services are a good thing. I'm not sure if they're going to last, because we've seen in Hollywood how all the streamers have just had incredible losses. But then again, I'm not sure. Well, some of these games are very expensive to keep on subscription services, but I'm not sure how the economics work out versus spending $100 million on a back row movie you're going to delete off the internet. I think that the economics might work out where you can run these services for a bit longer without having a wild success. I don't know. So we'll see. I like Game Pass. Every week I try to see what's new on Game Pass. I check things. I would never have played 99% of those games. I never would have bought them. I never would have played them if they weren't on Game Pass. So I've been exposed to a lot of stuff I never would have seen before on Game Pass.
That's cool. Well, I think we're going to wind it down here. Ralph, thank you so much for coming on. Before we close out, I just want to thank our executive producer, Martika Ibarra, our editor, Robert, and the entire Architects of Imagination crew. Thanks for joining me, Ralph.
Sure, no problem.
Till next time. We'll see you.
All right.